Millionaire challenges humble mechanic. Fix this engine and unlock an unexpected $50,000 salary. Jake wiped the sweat from his brow as he adjusted his worn-out cap. The familiar scent of motor oil and grease swirled around him, a comforting reminder of the legacy he carried. The sun cast warm rays across the auto shop's floors, illuminating the dust motes in the air. But today, an unsettling energy crackled through the workshop. When a sleek vintage car pulled up, the engine roared like it belonged in a different world, a world where success screamed from every chrome detail. Out stepped Stephen, the flashy millionaire, oozing confidence wrapped in designer fabrics. His booming voice echoed as he challenged Jake to fix the car within a week, a gamble worth $50,000. The lavish wager hung in the air, encapsulating dreams Jake desperately wanted to fulfill, not just for himself, but for Lily, his younger sister. College felt like a distant mirage, and he could practically see her shining potential slipping away if he didn't seize this chance. Shaking off his uncertainty, Jake accepted the challenge, fists clenched with determination. Yet under the surface, doubts clawed at him. Memories of his father's hands, rough yet skilled, haunted him. The words about integrity wove through his mind like a mantra, yet the shadow of the neighboring dealership's ridicule loomed large. "What do you know about cars without a degree?" echoed in his thoughts. His heart raced at the comparison. Jake felt crushed beneath the weight of expectation. His father's legacy battled the enticing lure of easy money. Each passing day morphed into a swirl of tension and uncertainty. Disassembling the car's engine, every piece felt like a puzzle with stakes higher than just pride. The pressure mounted like a coil ready to snap. He found himself oscillating between fierce resolve and paralyzing self-doubt. Every wrench turn and bolt loosened, seeped into his bones with despair. What if he couldn't fix this beauty? What if he failed, thereby failing Lily too? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Time slipped away, and Jake's hands trembled with the weight of his choice. The town had begun buzzing. The bet became the talk of Maplewood. He felt their gazes, their judgments, suffocating him. Was he really just a mechanic? And then it happened. A flicker of inspiration turned into an unexpected modification opportunity. He could enhance the engine beyond Stephen's wildest dreams. But with it came a torrent of self-doubt that threatened to derail him. The dealership sent a stinging message, a cruel reminder of what awaited should he fail. As the deadline inched closer, panic rooted itself in his chest. Should he chase the allure of quick cash, risking everything his family had built? Or did he hold fast to the teachings of his father, the very essence that shaped his identity? As the final hours ticked down and the stakes rose, Jake stared down the intersection of ambition and integrity. Could he create a masterpiece that represents both fearlessness and true craftsmanship? Or would he flounder beneath the expectations that threatened to swallow him whole? The moment was critical, teetering like a metal foot on a wrench. What would he choose? Jake stood in the heart of his workshop, encased in the metallic silence that felt both comforting and stifling. He had spent countless hours in this sanctuary, but today was different. Today felt like a crucible, where every doubt and fear would be molded into something new or shattered entirely. The vintage car loomed beside him, its engine disassembled, fragments of metal glinting under the bright fluorescent lights, reflecting Jake's own fractured confidence. As he surveyed the scattered pieces, a deep breath coursed through him. A part of his mind tugged at the shadows of his father's teachings. Each lesson shared amidst the sounds of clanking tools and oily rags echoed louder today. Integrity is your most valuable asset, his father had said, words imbued with a weight that was more than just a saying. Was he ready to let that asset be compromised for a fleeting chance at 50 grand? With determined resolve, Jake began re-examining the engine's intricate components. He meticulously documented everything, his hands moving from part to part. absorbing every detail. The thought of Lily's ambitions spurred him further. He envisioned her walking across a graduation stage, her dreams realized, and he knew that he could not falter now. But just as he started piecing together solutions, Stephen arrived, striding into the shop with an air of impatience. "You've got 3 days left, Jake. I hope you're not just daydreaming over there," he called, a taunt cloaked in casual bravado. Inside, Jake's instincts flared. Was Stephen nothing more than a distraction? Or was he right? Had he been floundering? The pressure intensified in his chest, yet a flicker of defiance ignited. "Don't worry, I'm moving," Jake retorted, though the defensiveness shimmered beneath. Stephen surveyed the disarray, a smirk on his face. "You know, a lot can go wrong if you don't have a degree backing you up. Just a thought." With that, Jake's mind raced. The barbs cut deeper than Stephen intended. He wasn't just a mechanic without formal training. He had spent years honing his craft, learning the intuition behind the machines. He possessed a wisdom that no classroom could teach. Suddenly, an insight crashed into place. Perhaps it was the self-doubt that had paralyzed him. Perhaps he needed to sequester it away, turning it into fuel instead. The idea struck like a bolt of inspiration. What if he incorporated a nitrous oxide system into the engine, an enhancement meant not just to repair but to elevate? It would turn the conventional fix into an extraordinary proclamation of his capabilities. With a surge of adrenaline, he charted the methods and calculated the risks. As designs began to swirl in his mind amidst the chaos, he noted the crumbling edges of his hesitations and insecurities. The clarity of purpose found a renewed voice. He painstakingly laid out the materials and tools he would need, the tension in his muscles transforming from anxiety into a focused thrill. But doubt still lingered in the periphery, weaving through the otherwise determined thoughts. The finality of his decision weighed heavily. If this didn't work, he wouldn't just lose the money. He would lose the respect he had fought to gain against the dealership's jeers. Yet amid the swirling uncertainties, Jake realized this was more than about the engine or the bet. It was about reclaiming his narrative. In the whirl of creativity and calculation, Jake embraced the challenge before him. As evening shadows lengthened across the shop floor, he set to work fervently, driven by newfound clarity. He had chosen not just to fix an engine, but to assert his identity, and as each piece fell into place, the uncertainty started to melt away. The moment had come, yet he felt a different kind of pressure rising, one that teetered on the precipice of not just success, but transformation. With night creeping in, the final mysteries of the engine loomed large. Would his gamble pay off, or had he just signed up for inevitable failure? The answer lingered in the air like an unturned wrench, waiting for the next decisive twist. Focused on the task at hand, Jake's hands moved with the precision that only comes from years of practice. As he assembled the engine components, the doubts that once crowded his mind receded like a distant storm. He could feel the nitrous oxide enhancement gripped firmly in his thoughts, taking shape both in his mind and in the metal before him. Each part clicked into place, forging a connection between the mechanical world and his steadfast resolve. But as he tackled the task, the emotions building within him were both exhilarating and terrifying. He was standing at the threshold of a self-made future, yet uncertainty still crept into his mind. What if it didn't work? What if he failed to prove his worth, not just to Stephen, but to himself? The gnawing fear persisted, but Jake pushed through. He focused on Lily, the way her face lit up when she talked about her dreams, and how proud he felt watching her. The knowledge that her future hinged in part on his success inspired him to dig deeper. He was not just fixing an engine, he was proving that his hands could shape destinies, including his own. Suddenly a burst of clarity struck him. The doubt he'd experienced wasn't a burden, it was a signal, a prompt to transform the way he approached challenges. If he wanted to seize this moment, he needed to own it fully. He began creating a comprehensive plan, a timeline for assembling the pieces, a strategy for implementing the nitrous oxide system, and contingency measures in case something went awry. It became clear that this was more than just a chance to win $50,000. It was his opportunity to show the world and himself what he was truly capable of. As hours turned into a blur of movement, the workshop thrummed around him. He carefully measured, adjusted, and recalibrated, channeling focus into every bolt he tightened. Workbenches piled high with tools and parts were like the scattered, chaotic aspects of his life that he was now starting to make sense of. Yet just as he felt the exhilarating rush of advancement, Stephen re-entered the shop. "Still here?" he said, leaning against the doorframe. "You're really banking on that nitrous system, huh? What if it blows up in your face?" Jake glanced up, irritation puncturing his concentration. "It won't explode if it's done right." "Right. Just like everything else?" "Come on, Jake, don't kid yourself." For a moment doubt threatened to seep through again, but he stood firm. "You clearly don't understand mechanics," he shot back, fighting to keep his voice steady. His mentor's eyes glinted with challenge, but the burden of his doubts felt lighter now, tempered with determination. "Let's be honest, you're not going to do something that changes the game in 3 days. You've had years already," Stephen pressed on, closing the distance between them. Jake could sense the subtle attempts to drag him down, but they only galvanized his resolve further. "Actually, these last few days are all I need," he replied, keeping his voice steady. "I'm not just a mechanic, I'm evolving." A smirk or a frown crossed Stephen's face as he turned to leave. The taunts hung in the air like grease on metallic surfaces, but they no longer stung. Instead, they fueled him. Jake turned back to the engine, each piece representing not just a component of a car but a step towards redefining who he was. He immersed himself back into the task, his mind racing between calculations and dreams of success. Each movement now felt weighted with purpose and potential. As the clock raced toward midnight, Jake could feel the adrenaline coursing through him. The final tests loomed large and he hesitated only briefly. This was his moment of truth, and he was wildly unprepared, yet invigorated by the sheer audacity of it all. Would he crush the challenges ahead, or would he discover something deeper within himself amidst potential failure? With resolve hardening his heart, he dove back into his work, determined to find out. Tomorrow would usher in revelation, and Jake braced himself for the risks ahead. He wanted to discover whether the evolution he sought would take flight, or if it would once again drop to the ground. The anticipation churned in his gut, the answer lying just beneath the surface waiting for him to uncover it. The workshop was still dark when Jake returned the following morning, a flickering fluorescent light buzzing overhead as it struggled against the remnants of night. He had hardly found any sleep. Thoughts of the engine raced through his mind, weaving a complex tapestry of calculations and concepts. The desire to prove Stephen wrong felt like a pulse, driving him forward with a relentless energy that could not be quenched. As he approached the engine, he instinctively began to inspect his work from the previous night. Every piece seemed to gleam with potential, yet under the surface, a rising tide of uncertainty threatened to envelop him. Was it enough? Had he truly taken every precaution? Checking the details felt ominous, as though he were peeling back layers of his fragile confidence. With a deep breath, Jake grabbed his tools, his fingers brushing past the cool metal, grounding him amidst the whirlwind of thoughts. Each click and clatter echoed in the otherwise silent workshop, resembling the chaotic rhythm of his mind battling with inner doubts. He settled into a routine, an almost meditative flow, tightening screws, making small adjustments, tuning the engine until everything felt right. Memories of Lily's bright eyes surfaced, and he grasped onto her dreams like a lifebuoy in stormy seas. Her laughter had become a cornerstone, a reminder of what he was striving for, an antidote to the venomous taunts that had poisoned his enthusiasm. If everything aligned perfectly, they could stand together, a duo ready to take on whatever life presented. As he calibrated the nitrous oxide system, the mid-morning sun began to spill into the workshop, casting sharp shadows that danced against the walls. With every tick of the clock, time felt as if it was slipping through his fingers, yet he had no intention of dwelling on moments lost. No, this was about future moments, those waiting just ahead if he could pull this off. Then, just as he tightened a final bolt, the door swung open and Stephen strutted in, posture unwavering and eyes glinting with skepticism. "You look committed," he said, arms crossed tauntingly. Still think you can do this? Jake resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Excitement surged within him, ignited by the knowledge he had invested in this task. You're about to see what I can do. In action, Jake replied, an edge of defiance threading his voice. Oh, really? A tight deadline and a messy engine? Sounds risky, Stephen quipped, the smirk etched on his face, a blatant attempt to draw Jake into a trap of self-doubt. Risk is part of the game. With each word, Jake felt a surge of empowerment. He was no longer a mere mechanic, he was a creator, a mastermind of his fate. Lifting himself up, Jake began to execute the final step, the test phase. The roar of the engine would come next, and with that roar, he believed, would emerge the culmination of his efforts and evolution. He flicked the ignition switch. Silence enveloped him momentarily, the weight of anticipation pressing down like an anchor. A flicker of fear crept in. What if he hadn't done it right? What if this was the moment everything crumbled? And then, he turned the key again, firm and unyielding. The engine coughed, sputtered, and finally roared to life. It was music, a symphony of machinery harmonizing with the beat of his heart. The sound exploded in the workshop, ringing in his ears like a thunderous applause. It surged ahead, wrapping around Jake in a whirlwind of affirmation. But just as the wave of elation washed over him, he noticed a flicker at the corner of his vision. The pressure gauge, oscillating erratically. Panic clawed at him, his mind racing as he realized that something was amiss. This wasn't the time for setbacks. Determined, Jake dove deeper into the chaos. This was meant to be triumphant, not a moment of shame. Now was not merely about proving himself. It was about uncovering hidden skills, demonstrating resilience against the looming tide of doubt. In that spiraling moment, he made a choice, the kind that could transform not just the engine but his very essence. I'm not done yet, he whispered, resolute. As he raced against time, it became clear. This was more than just about the car. This was an awakening, and what lay ahead promised to be a turning point, one that could leave him standing tall or maybe flat on his face. But Jake was ready to delve into deeper waters. He would confront the chaos and in the process redefine not just an engine but perhaps himself as well. The stakes had never been higher, and the true test was yet to begin. The engine's roar filled the workshop, a cacophony of sound that vibrated through Jake's bones. Yet rather than basking in the triumph of that moment, he found himself grappling with a heavier shadow. The pressure gauge fluttered wildly, the readings indicating something was very wrong. Anxiety surged within him, pulsating with urgency. As he knelt by the disordered array of components, his mind raced to dissect each part's function and interrelation with others. What had he overlooked? The weight of expectation felt like a vice closing in around him, squeezing out every ounce of confidence he had carefully built overnight. This was not merely a mechanical failure. It became a test of his ability to adapt, to troubleshoot under the unforgiving gaze of both Stephen and his own simmering doubt. Escalating tension was breathing down his neck, and he had to act. He pushed the panic aside, forcing himself to focus. The pressure gauge flickered in his periphery like a taunting specter. This was about more than proving Stephen wrong. This moment had evolved beyond protocol and strategy. It had turned into a battle for his beliefs, a confrontation that could either ground him or send him soaring. Focus, he muttered under his breath. What's changed since yesterday? He recalled his calculations and the enhancements he had bravely implemented. Each modification carried the weight of his ambition and the optimistic whims of dreams shared between him and Lily. Those dreams hung heavy in the air, demanding resolve as he scrutinized his workbench, grabbing a notebook filled with hastily jotted notes. The clarity of his initial plans became muddied. The erratic back and forth of the gauge served as an echo of his own indecision. Jake took a deep breath, forcing himself to slow down. He visualized the components in his mind, tracing the flow of fuel and air, considering the nitrous oxide adjustments he had made. Just as he was about to dismiss a radical thought, it struck him. What if the nitrous system itself was misfiring? Perhaps that adjustment, ambitious but ill-timed, was leading to the chaos before him. With newfound determination, he refocused on the engine's nitrous oxide lines, methodically reviewing every twist and joint. Jake's hands moved deftly, a whirlwind of action guided by the clarity of intent. He unclipped, reattached, and recalibrated, feeling the tension of fear ebb as curiosity took its place. Each minor adjustment became a step towards reclamation, a formulation of equilibrium amidst the tumult. Sweating under the fluorescent lights, he barely noticed Stephen hovering at the door, disbelief etched into his face at the sight of Jake's singular purpose. It sent a jolt through him, not fuel for resentment, but a spark of inspiration. This wasn't a battle against his colleague, it was a confrontation with himself. After countless adjustments, Jake felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through him as he stepped back to assess the engine. This was not just a fight for the car, it was a fight for his self-worth, for recognition in a world that often scrutinized those from less privileged backgrounds. He hesitated, pausing to collect his thoughts once more. It wasn't enough merely to fix the gauge. He had to ensure every facet of the engine hummed in perfect unison. Each component, after all, was integral not just to the function of the machine, but to his burgeoning identity. With his heart pounding against his ribcage, he prepared for another test. Steeling his nerves, he flipped the ignition switch, daring to hope. Would this moment be the turning point, or just another disappointment hanging in the air? The engine grumbled, then once again erupted to life, this time with a deep, throaty growl that sent a rush of exhilaration through Jake. He watched the pressure gauge stabilize, the wild oscillation replaced by a steady rhythm. Triumph coursed through him, transcending his earlier doubts. The engine lay reborn before him, a testament to his resilience. But as the echo of success settled, he sensed a larger storm brewing on the horizon. The consequences of his choices, the pressure to follow through with further challenges, loomed just out of sight. Would this be the end of his struggle or merely the beginning? Determined, Jake dared to lean into the storm, ready to confront whatever it would bring next, as the path ahead twisted into uncharted territory. A voice, internal yet insistent, reminded him, what lay ahead could redefine success in ways he had yet to comprehend. The engine's steady growl settled into an unexpected harmony, filling the quiet cracks of the workshop. As Jake wiped the sweat from his brow, a profound sense of clarity washed over him. This wasn't just about fixing a machine, it was about redefining his place in an unforgiving world. Yet as the adrenaline coursed through him, so did the reality of what lay ahead. A confrontation not only with Stephen, but a looming confrontation with his own limitations. A sudden voice broke through his introspection. "Impressive work, Jake. I didn't think you'd pull it off." It was Stephen, his tone strained yet begrudgingly respectful. The compliment, however, seemed to come wrapped in undercurrents of challenge. Amid the casual praise, Jake detected an unsettling flicker of competition. "Thanks," Jake replied, forcing nonchalance. "But it's just the start, there's more to do." He felt an uncharacteristic resolve cementing within him, not just to meet expectations but to challenge them. Yet the weight of that challenge loomed larger now than ever before. As if sensing his internal battle, Stephen leaned against the workbench, crossing his arms. "You realize this team has bigger goals, right? We're not just here to fix engines, we're building a reputation. People will notice when the work isn't done by the book." Jake's stomach churned at the insinuation. Why was reputation more important than the tangible results of hard work? "I believe it is possible to merge innovation with tradition," he replied, finding courage in his conviction. Confrontation came naturally to Stephen, but now Jake was ready to stand firm, to embrace that confrontation for what it was, a pathway for growth. "So what's next?" Stephen challenged, his confidence unwavering. Waves of uncertainty creep back in. What was next? Was he ready to leap from mere tinkerer to innovator, potentially facing backlash for breaking the mold? Jake pulled his thoughts together, allowing the heartbeat he had felt only moments before to guide him. To avoid being paralyzed by the stakes ahead was critical. "I want to explore the turbo system next. It could elevate our performance levels." "Interesting choice," Stephen smirked, appearing taken aback but intrigued all the same. "Just remember, There's a fine line between ambition and recklessness. Jake remained silent, contemplating the truth of that statement. The stakes grew heightened. Ambition without grounding could lead either to innovation or chaos. Still, there was a seedling of excitement in him, a hint of the success he yearned to define alongside his burgeoning identity. The rest of the afternoon drew on, and as Jake delved into research materials on turbo systems, the challenges felt enormous. Each page demanded diligence and ingenuity, but with concentration, his anxieties began to dissipate, replaced by excitement. He had learned to situate his confidence not in the approval of others but the clarity of his own vision. But as night fell and the fluorescent lights flickered above, Jake's drive remained strong. Each decision count, sharpening his resolve to challenge both himself and the limitations others had placed around him. However, just as he began to unravel the complexities of turbocharging, the workshop door swung open, and in walked the owner of the car Jake had revived mere hours before. The man's eyes were full of a peculiar mix of gratitude and scrutiny. "I heard about your work, Jake," he said, standing tall, "and I have a proposition for you." A mixture of anticipation and trepidation surged through Jake. Each heartbeat warned him of the potential risks. A higher ride could mean greater falls, but it might also unlock uncharted territories of success. Would this be the moment that initiated an even larger confrontation with fear, or the key to opportunities he had only ever dreamed of? "Go on," Jake urged, unable to conceal his underlying excitement. The next words out of the man's mouth could either forge a new path or continue to bind him to the familiar. Whatever lay ahead, Jake knew he had to prepare himself for the unexpected. The real work was just beginning, and he was ready to embrace it entirely. "Let's cut to the chase, Jake," the man began, his voice steady but laced with an intensity that set Jake on edge. "I have a rare engine that needs modification for a high-performance racing event. If you can transform this engine into a competitive machine within a month, I'll not only pay you $50,000, but also offer you a role as my personal mechanic." Jake's breath caught in his throat. He had imagined opportunities like this, but they always felt distant, like whispers of dreams barely touched by reality. Now the proposition sat before him like a hissing challenge, both potent and intimidating. Bits of the engine he could visualize in his mind, his hands working the tools, his focus narrowing as he threw everything he had into the task. "Why me?" Jake asked, gauging the sincerity of the offer, battling with his surprise. "You've got plenty of options." The man chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Because I've heard things about your knack for innovation and that engine you fixed. You don't just repair, you reimagine, and that's what I need, and—" His words ignited a flicker of confidence within Jake, but a gnawing question wedged itself in his mind. Was he truly ready for this? A month felt like precious little time to make decisions that could define his career. Failure was not just a slight miscalculation. It would carve out his limits, visibly tearing at the fabric of his self-worth. Yet as Jake eyed the man, he sifted through hesitations, recognizing the opportunity as a junction, one requiring yes or no. The stakes were high. Success could pave the way for his transformation. It also meant standing against the doubts and expectations that had long shadowed him, one being Stephen's incessant criticism of any deviation from conventional methods. "I'll need resources, assistance, and access to advanced tools," Jake asserted, attempting to broker the best terms he could. "Of course," the man replied, intrigued by his assertiveness. "I'll even bring along some of my own team to help speed things up. You'd have autonomy on the project, but my eyes will be on you." Jake absorbed that notion. Autonomy, trust, and a team could propel him far, outperforming expectations. But would they truly understand his innovative vision? Or would they attempt to steer him back to familiar, traditional constraints? The thought gave him pause. He was well aware that ambition, when not grounded, could lead to reckless decisions, and he had seen others falter under pressure. "Let me speak with my boss," Jake said finally, reclaiming his steadiness. He was committed to exploring this path, but he also wanted to ensure he wasn't disregarding his current position and the potential consequences from Stephen. "Make your case," the man replied, his eyes narrowing slightly. But remember, time is of the essence. I need a quick decision." As Jake contemplated the risk of entering this new realm, his mind raced with images of soaring engines and racing interiors. A surge of determination burst within him. He would confront Stephen, present an idea that challenged the conventionalism coursing through their shop, and claim his role as an innovator in a world that thrived on tradition. The way forward was becoming clearer. He could redefine his path, carving out a new identity marked by success rather than conformity. But within that clarity loomed a shadow of doubt, a risk that this moment could unravel, leading to chaos rather than the desired breakthrough. Jake found himself at a crossroads, the stakes heightened beyond anything he had previously faced. His heart drummed louder as he realized the path to greatness was not merely about the technical aspects of engineering, but how he managed the weight of expectations, both his own and those of others. With resolve solidifying, he straightened his shoulders, steeling himself for the critical conversation with Stephen. The moment he'd long anticipated had arrived. Now he needed to transform potential into reality. Would this gamble elevate him to unforeseen heights, or would it lead to an exposure of vulnerabilities long hidden? As he prepared to approach Stephen, a new wave of uncertainty crashed over him. The confrontation awaited, and the outcome could shift everything he thought he knew about himself. The stakes were about to get much higher. Jake paced the floor of the shop, his heart a chaotic symphony. The tools that typically grounded him felt foreign in this moment, every tool a reminder of the risks ahead, both exhilarating and terrifying. He glanced at the calendar pinned to the wall, the days glaring back at him, each one a countdown to what felt like a life-altering decision. Confronting Stephen was inevitable. He would need to advocate for his ambitions, a storm of thoughts igniting fury in his gut. The man's words echoed relentlessly in Jake's mind. His innovation could stand out. Yet was it worth fracturing his standing in a place he had called home? Would Stephen even entertain the notion of working outside of his tightly controlled playbook? The thought tugged at his resolve. But Jake squeezed his fists into tight balls, channeling frustration instead of fear. He would approach Stephen with an unshakable confidence, guided by a vision of the engine that could spearhead his breakthrough. But the very thought of Stephen's resistance made his pulse quicken. He could almost feel the icy smear of doubt creeping into his consciousness. Movement broke the spell of his thoughts. Stephen strode through the workshop entrance, wiping grease from his hands with an air of superiority. His eyes darted, surveying the space like a hawk assessing its territory. Jake straightened instinctively, shifting abruptly into a more guarded stance. "What's on your mind, Jake?" Stephen asked, feigning a casual interest. "You look like you're about to unveil some revolutionary modification you've been working on." The sarcasm dripped from his words, taunting Jake's resolve. Jake inhaled deeply, summoning his courage. "Actually, I wanted to discuss an opportunity. I've been offered a project, an engine refurbishment for a high-performance racing event. It could elevate my skills and income significantly, but it'll require some resources from here." Stephen's brow arched skeptically. The corners of his mouth curled into a dismissive frown. "We've got enough on our plate. You know how our shop runs. We can't be a playground for your aspirations." His tone was sharp, cutting as he brandished the conventionalist approach that had kept Jake in the shadows for too long. "Isn't that precisely the problem?" Jake pressed, igniting a flicker of defiance. "I want to push boundaries, experiment with modifications. We're fixing engines. But what if we're not evolving? This job could mean more than just a paycheck. It's a chance to grow." Stephen's face contorted with irritation. "This isn't the path for you, Jake. Get your head out of the clouds and focus on the work you have." Each rebuff amplified Jake's urgency, dulling his instinct to retreat. Yet beneath Stephen's harsh exterior lay a palpable shift, an inconspicuous recognition of Jake's growing audacity. Fueled by a sense of purpose, Jake decided to maintain pressure. "I might be a humble mechanic, but isn't innovation what we need to thrive? I believe we can bring something new to the table that sets us apart." "New doesn't mean better, Jake," Stephen snapped. "What you're suggesting sounds reckless. I advise you to stick to tried-and-true methods that have kept us stable. Otherwise, you may find yourself outside this shop." The threat lingered, laden with the weight of his vested interest in conformity. The walls seemed to close in around Jake, the walls of his own mind reinforcing Stephen's criticism. But tucked behind self-doubt, an unrelenting flame simmered, a recognition that clarity often came cloaked in defiance. It urged him forward as he felt the chance slipping away. "Don't you want to be remembered for more than just what we've always done?" Jake countered, anxious but unwavering. "I need to take this leap to discover what I'm truly capable of." The silence stretched, neither man ready to expel the tension electrifying the air. The moment hung, a suspended, unresolved confrontation culminating in a decision. Would Stephen shatter Jake's aspirations and send him crashing back into the familiar realm of mediocrity? Or could he face a shift, a chance to redefine the boundaries of their shop and his own identity? Jake fought through the fog of disapproval surrounding him. This was about reclaiming his narrative. Time was running out and he started to grasp the essence of who he wanted to become. The stakes rose with every moment with Stephen, forcing Jake to wrestle with both external opposition and his internal fears. As silence draped over them once more, Jake took a deep breath, resolved to stand tall in the face of uncertainty. The time for action had arrived. Would he remain complacent and allow Stephen's vision to dictate his future? Or would he break free from the chains of doubt and adventure into uncharted territories? The pressure now felt unbearable, a ticking clock urging him forward as clarity emerged from chaos. Would the leap of faith yield growth, or would it expose the core of his vulnerabilities? The potential answers lingered heavy in the air as he prepared for the next move. The lines were being drawn and Jake's journey was only just beginning. Jake leaned against the workbench, heart racing, acutely aware of every second ticking by. The shop was unnervingly silent, making his heartbeat seem louder, an incessant drum echoing fears of both failure and possibility. Despite Stephen's fierce opposition, the fire sparked in him from the confrontation now felt more like an energy source than a burden. If he were to forge a new path, he had to embrace the moment instead of retreating back to the shadows. He glanced at the engine layout on the bench, plans sketched and ideas brewing. What if he could take the leap? What if he poured every ounce of himself into this project? The racing event loomed ahead like a beacon, and the self-doubt that had been a constant whisper was now a faint hum, nearly drowned out by the roar of determination. Jake grabbed his pencil, outlining a new approach to the engine refurbishing project. He began to break down the modifications he'd envisioned, turbocharging the intake, tweaking the ignition system for peak performance, fine-tuning the exhaust for efficiency and sound. Each stroke of the pen strengthened his resolve, a subconscious declaration that he wasn't merely fixing engines anymore. He was ready to innovate. As he worked, his mind wandered back to his conversation with Stephen. Every dismissive remark was an obstacle, but now they morphed into challenges, their weight transforming from daunting to motivational. The thought of proving Stephen wrong set his pulse racing, and a thrill surged through him mingling with fear. Each part of the engine became a symbol. For the first time, he saw his future reflected in the very components he was assembling, the potential for a new horizon hanging just beyond the horizon of traditional mechanics. Incrementally, this project began to resemble not just a step forward but an act of rebellion against mediocrity. Just as he finished a section of the design, the door swung open again and in walked Alex, a longtime colleague. Jake felt a pang of apprehension. Alex was usually the voice of reason in the shop, a comfort in Stephen's stern environment. But today, Jake needed more than comfort. He needed allies. "Hey Jake, you look intense. What are you working on?" Alex asked, leaning over the table. Jake hesitated but quickly decided he needed accountability. "I'm going to refurbish this engine for a racing event. I have some ideas that could really change the game." Alex raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Racing? Sounds ambitious. You know Stephen won't like it." "I know," Jake replied, reluctant to dampen the spark. "But this could be my way out. A chance to show what I can really do." "Have you thought about where you might go with that?" Alex asked, leaning in closer. "I mean, are you thinking big?" "Bigger than this shop, that's for sure," Jake said, the words crystallizing into a decision. "If I take this risk, I need to own it. It's time for me to find out if I have what it takes to succeed outside these walls. Alex nodded, as if accepting an unspoken challenge. You're talking about stepping out of your comfort zone, Jake. That's a big deal. Jake nodded, feeling the gravity of his words. But it's a risk worth taking. I can't keep falling back into line. Let me help, Alex said after a pause. If you're going to really go for it, we can brainstorm together. It might give you the edge you've been looking for. The prospect of collaboration reinvigorated Jake, and for the first time in ages he felt the chains of Steven's expectations melt away. Together, he and Alex planned the modifications deeply, pooling their skills and ideas, referencing past projects, looking at innovative techniques from across the industry. The synergy pushed Jake further, amplifying his potential in a way few experiences had before. But beneath the excitement, a new layer of anxiety brewed. Would Steven escalate his attempts to quell Jake's ambitions? Could the partnership with Alex withstand scrutiny? As the hours slipped by, it became clear that Jake's odyssey had not merely begun, it was accelerating toward an unknown destination. The point of no return loomed ahead, and Jake could feel the winds of change swirling around him, enticing and terrifying all at once. He looked at the plans scattered on the table, a vision of growth and transformation laid out in front of him. This was more than just a project. It was a declaration of freedom, an exploration of his own capabilities. What remained uncertain was the cost of pursuing this path. The question weighed heavily on him. If he succeeded, what would that mean for his current life? And if he failed, how much would he sacrifice? Determined, Jake set his jaw and moved closer to the plans he was drafting, resolved to tighten the designs. The challenge had ignited a fire within him, transforming fear into exhilaration. The internal clock ticked down, and with every advance, Jake felt the veil of his potential lifting. Decisions loomed ahead, sharper than ever, with uncharted waters lay beneath. As a shift in dynamics began to take shape, Jake knew one thing with certainty. He was ready to face whatever tide would come his way. But just as he prepared to take his first bold steps, a text notification lit up his phone, a message from Steven that sent a chill down his spine. We need to talk. The ground under his feet shifted wildly, and with it, all of Jake's carefully laid plans hung in the balance. Jake stood in the middle of the shop, his heart racing as he stared at the message on his phone. A cold wave of apprehension washed over him. He knew this conversation with Steven could determine everything. He mentally prepared himself for whatever might come, lambasting discouragement or supportive criticism. One thing was clear. It was time to face the music and lay his cards on the table. Gathering his composure, he met Steven in the far corner of the workshop, away from the clatter of tools and the scrutiny of their colleagues. The air thickened as Steven crossed his arms and fixed Jake with a steady gaze. Jake, Steven started, his tone unexpectedly neutral. I heard rumors about your engine project, about racing. I'd like to know what you're up to. It's more than a rumor, Steven. I'm working on a significant modification that could redefine my future in this industry, Jake said, his voice ringing with clarity. I need your support, not your skepticism. Fingers tapping a beat against his forearm, Steven considered the implications. You realize that this is a risky venture, right? You could tarnish the shop's reputation. We're recognized for our craftsmanship, not racing modifications. Jake felt a surge of conviction rise within him. It is precisely that reputation that I'm aiming to expand. We can aspire to more. Merge innovation with our craftsmanship. It's time to push the boundaries of what this shop represents. The intensity cracked between them like static electricity. For the first time, Jake wasn't asking for permission. He was making a case. Steven narrowed his eyes, but there was no outright refusal in his expression. And if you fail, what then? Jake's pulse quickened yet steadied. If I fail, I'll own that failure. But if I succeed, we elevate our status in the industry. Plus, I have Alex on board. We have the right blend of skill and ambition. Steven's posture shifted slightly, the tension easing as he contemplated Jake's words. You really believe you're ready for this? Jake took a steadying breath. He wasn't just speaking from hope but from a place of earned competence. I've put in the work, learned the lessons, and honed my skills. I have a vision that transcends just fixing engines. This is about innovation, Stephen. A chance for us to flourish. Silence fell, thick with the weight of impending change. Jake could feel his resolve hardening under the gaze of his former mentor. Fine, Stephen said finally, his voice a blend of reluctant approval and skepticism. I'll support you, but you better be prepared to deliver results. This shop depends on it, and you will be under scrutiny. Relief washed over Jake, unfurling inside him like a banner. Thank you, Stephen, I won't let you or the shop down. With encouragement ignited, Jake dove into the project with renewed energy. The weeks leading up to the racing event passed in a blur of hustle, brainstorming sessions with Alex, complex calculations, and intense trials with the engine. Each day brought new challenges, but with every challenge, Jake felt the weight of the old self lifting. His growth accelerated. He was no longer an amateur mechanic, but a pioneering force forging a new path. Then came the day of the racing event, the culmination of Jake's ambitions. As he watched the engine he had painstakingly transformed roar to life, pride surged through him. A profound sense of accomplishment radiated like warmth on a chilly day. It was exhilarating to see his designs turn into reality. The engine not just functional, but a thrill of innovation. The crowd swelled with excitement. A sea of attendees gathered to marvel at the power of the machines on display. Conversations buzzed around him, each word an affirmation of his hard work. Stephen approached him amidst the crowd, a hint of admiration in his eyes. You've done well. Seems you were right to chase this opportunity. Jake couldn't hide his smile, an unfamiliar yet gratifying sensation of recognition washing over him. He had taken a leap, confronted his fears, and emerged transformed, not just in the eyes of others, but in his understanding of himself. Later that evening, as the races unfurled brilliantly, Jake stood taller, embodying a newfound confidence. He had achieved more than just a monetary reward. He had conquered self-doubt, proven his innovation was worthy of recognition, and most importantly, reshaped his identity in a way he had only once dreamed of. Victory tasted sweet, but more than that was the assurance he had created for Lily, the stability and inspiration now within reach. The prospect of a brighter future twinkled above him like a constellation, each star a sign of what perseverance could yield. Jake beamed, bathed in the recognition he had fought so hard to earn. In the glorious chaos of the event, he finally felt aligned with the legacy of his father. Not just a mechanic, but a creator, molding the future. Above all, he had discovered a profound lesson. The mechanics of dreams required both engine power and the courage to drive forward against the unknown. This was not merely the end. This was the beginning of Jake's vibrant journey, ready to explore the vast open road ahead. Now it's your turn to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss out on the next exclusive emotional stories that ignite the spirit of perseverance. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm. Your support is crucial for keeping these inspirational narratives alive. Comment below and share your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. And most importantly, share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this transformation. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories recognize the value of lifting each other up through these dynamic narratives.